I want to introduce Alec Longarzo. He's the Director of Business Development at Dcode, and he's also an Industry Vice Chair for the ACT-IAC Associates 2021 Leadership Development Program. And he's also a member of a few associations like ACT-IAC and AFCEA. So Alec, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Jeremy. I'm excited.
So for those who haven't met you or gotten to know you, share a bit about your background, where you are from, and what you do.
Sure. So happy to do that. My father was in the military, my grandparents were in the military, and I kind of broke that chain of military service. And my father kind of was stationed all over the country and globally, actually, and wound up in a town called Carlisle, Pennsylvania. Jim Thorpe, kind of one of the most well-known individuals coming out of there. And didn't know where I wanted to go to college right away. And then kind of had relatives in Lexington, Kentucky, where the University of Kentucky is. So I moved out of state, wanted to get away. I was used to moving every couple of years. So moved to Kentucky, got a double major in kind of business analytics within the business program, which was a new curriculum that they developed. And I think I was like the only class that ever went through it. I think the professor who was leading it left. So kind of ironic and funny. Then also had a finance double major and a comm minor. So I was really unsure of what I wanted to do. My father was the CIO of the War College and became kind of a federal contractor, as natural for most former military personnel to retire and move on. So I had kind of two paths. It was Chicago was like really cool and exciting. I had a lot of friends who in that area moved out there for finance jobs and just general kind of post college careers. And then I had DC, which was pretty quickly told to me is there's always going to be opportunities here and the money will never leave. The federal government's here. So it's a great hotspot for kind of looking for opportunities and growing your career in different avenues. So I sent out a ton of resumes, and the first that hit was at CGI Federal, where I started my career right around an interesting time point with the federal marketplace. So I had a really interesting kind of early career learning the ins and outs of federal contracting, the good and bad. And then I moved to a mid-size called Excella Consulting, where we work primarily with national security and really pushing the envelope on agile and DevSecOps development with components of AI and data science. And then I guess 9 or 10 years later, now I'm at Dcode leading their director of sales. And if I would have looked back at year one and say, hey, you're going to be in sales, I'd be like, no, you're crazy. Like was never kind of my goal, but kind of fell into it with going through my career. I had the opportunity to raise my hands and ask really good leadership at the time at CGI to allow me to go through a rotation program, which gave me access and visibility and learning experience. I did BD capture early on. I did pricing, I did contracts, realized I didn't love that, was on a project team doing delivery work to CMS for 2.5 years as a BA and tester. So really learned kind of all the aspects and found I really loved the strategy side of sales and BD. So that's where I've kind of settled in, and I've really been enjoying the past couple of years in that role.
So do you think the choices you made in terms of your education have helped in the role you're in today? I'm just curious.
I do. And I think I was lucky enough to have mentors through the way to say, hey, you're not stuck in a role. Like you might be doing it for a year or 2 years and it feels like that's forever, but don't be afraid to raise your hand and ask questions and ask if you're allowed to try something else. And a lot of times there's leadership, they're willing to do that and take individuals that have kind of a desire to learn more, take them under the wing, kind of give them the opportunity. And that's the same message I tell to our associates that are going through our program right now is the only thing stopping you right now is you not sending an email or making a phone call. Do that and your life might change the next day. And the worst case scenario, you're at this and they say no, you're in the same position you were that day. So just make the little changes and just get a little bit out of your comfort zone to try. And it's exciting when you see people that you mentor do that and kind of succeed.
Interesting. So, I mean, for a sales, BD job, I mean, there isn't like a college degree for that, right? So your business and finance, I just think possibly set you up pretty well for that. Maybe not, right? It is interesting how those careers like the BD and sales people fall into because they get a chance to try it and they go, wow, I like this. But I never would have thought to try it to begin with.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's kind of one of those, not to look down on sales, but sometimes it's the easiest entryway into some of these opportunities where they're willing to take a chance. You don't need a certain skill set like a developer. You don't need a coding language. A lot of times, if you have this tenacity or willingness to do something, sales is a good entry point. And I would recommend people to, maybe that's your entry point, but raise your hand and try other things. There's a lot out there. Just because you're in sales 1 year doesn't mean you need to be in it the next year.
That's a very good point, right? Leverage your network, leverage the people you meet. So as you've been in your career now for a while, what's something you've seen that you wish, if they came to you, Alec, and said, Alec, today you get to suggest a change for our industry or how we're doing things. What kind of change would you see that we should consider making?
So one thing that's really interesting is I work with a lot of startups in my current role, and it was very eye-opening, the challenges. I understand a small business or a more traditional integrator, but startups that are coming from different ecosystems that have venture-backed funding, or just funding in themselves, like your typical couple guys in a garage, they're working on a problem set. It's not easy for them to navigate the environment and to spend resources to even prepare for federal support. So a lot of it's commercial because they can get those quick wins, and it might be small. And if we could change the dynamic, and I think we're slowly seeing that across DoD and some of the federal civilian agencies, of let's give them, or let's allow them to pitch to us and give small checks and prototype what they have. And then we're willing to take bets on them. A lot of small bets that might pan out to a larger kind of capability. Opening up that avenue of allowing kind of the future technology or emerging technology into the ecosystem and not always rely on our traditional kind of methods of acquiring these type of capabilities.
That's interesting, right? I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, I'm in the government side, and the way we do procurements are heavily weighted towards, large initiatives or I need a bunch of people, right, to come in and do services. And that isn't always accessible to a smaller entity who's just starting out.
Especially around when you get into the vehicle side, where a startup or small really has challenges, and they've really moved towards that scoring card criteria where you need CMMI or you need certain sort of ISO certifications. Those are expensive and not always necessary for a small business from their perspective. Like there's some challenges that I feel like you're removing some of the innovation because you want to streamline it. And I understand there's kind of a balance, but how do we balance that and allow some of these really innovative companies that don't have the initial funds to knock out some of those like security certifications, your ISOs, your CMMIs, and allow them to play?
That's a good point. I'm gonna go out on a limb as a government person to say, they're not always required, but yet we put them on there, right? And who knows the reason? There could be some interesting reasons, some interesting decisions that went on inside the agency, but we should definitely consider that. I like your suggestion, right? From the government side, especially since we're the ones crafting the requirements, we need to think about that when we put those things out, or come up with innovative ways to allow some small people to play. So what do you have going on, Alec? I mean, what you just changed jobs fairly recently, and so I imagine that's time to get ramped up and get them going. And then in your volunteering with ACT-IAC and FCA or other associations, what do you have going on, and what's the kind of near future look for you?
No, it's great. So for me, it's really fun because Dcode I consider almost a startup themselves, where one of the most capable BD kind of organizations where everyone kind of gives an effort to do outreach. But it's really exciting because I get to come in and help kind of think of the strategy from a large holistic viewpoint of, we've had some great awards and done great work across the DoD with AFWorks and DHA, but how do we grow that, and how do we help bring the companies that come through our accelerator program? So it's a rolling cohort of sorts. So we bring startups into our ecosystem and then really showcase them to the government with roundtables and working sessions. How do we spread that and that might be part of the discussion is getting them to the table so then government realizes there is real value here. They are creating real capability. So that's kind of always something I'm pushing for and kind of learning where problem sets that align with kind of what we're trying to solve, bring emerging tech in government. So every day is a little bit different. And from like an association standpoint, it's really just engaging with the ecosystem of vendors. So I'm agnostic to smalls, medium sizes, larges, really engaging with them and trying to bridge the connection between government and industry, because a lot of the conversation just needs to be had. And it's sometimes it's just awareness that's not there, where this organization's doing this, this other organization, let's bridge the conversation and do it in an open forum that one is comfortable and allowable with the FAR and DFAR.
Right.
So it's been really exciting. And I was on some of the young professional forums, and that's been cool because we've been able to shape some activities, some events, and get some really keynote speakers that some of the young professionals in their career wouldn't really have access to right away. So it allows them to learn and almost reach out and ask for some mentorship and recommendations from those leaders in industry and government, which is always exciting. And I kind of get giddy meeting them too, because you hear of their careers and the stuff they've worked on. So it's really exciting. And I will continue to do it just because it's fun, and getting to meet people in the network is always exciting.
That's awesome. Well, Alec, I want to thank you for coming on the podcast today. This has been a great conversation, and I look forward to many more conversations with you.
Thanks, Jeremy. I appreciate it.